The anonymous email arrived on a gray, rain-slicked afternoon. I was in my office, reviewing the budget projections for the next fiscal quarter's medical equipment acquisitions. My assistant, Becky, knocked and poked her head in to tell me the board had called a last-minute meeting I needed to attend. I glanced at my phone and saw the new email notification. The sender was a random string of numbers. There was no subject line. Normally, an email like that goes straight to the trash, but something compelled me to open it. The moment I did, my mind went blank. A series of photos loaded, each one a shard of glass driving straight into my heart. The pictures were of my wife, Claire, with Ethan Vance, the son of the hospital's founder. From the opulent background, I could tell they were in a private suite at some high-end club. They were close, intimate. In one photo, Claire was nestled in Ethan's arms. The last image was a screenshot of a wire transfer. It showed a massive sum of money moving from the hospital's charity foundation to an unknown account. I stared, my fingers squeezing the mouse so hard I thought it might crack. But on the surface, I kept my breathing steady, my expression unreadable. Becky knocked again. Dr. Hayes, the board meeting is about to start. I stood, straightened my suit jacket, and said in a calm voice, "Okay, I'm on my way." The moment I stepped out of my office, I told myself, stay calm. As the director of St. Jude's Medical Center, I knew that acting on impulse was the most foolish move I could make. After the meeting, I didn't go straight home. I went to the finance department. Dr. Hayes, what brings you down here? Susan, the head of finance, looked surprised. I gave her a practice smile. With the hospital's anniversary gala coming up, I wanted to get a look at the books. Thought I'd start by reviewing the donation logs for the charity foundation. She immediately pulled up the relevant accounts. To my surprise, there had been 5 unusual transfers from the foundation in the last 3 months alone, each one for over $1 million. And every single transfer had occurred while I was out of town on business. What are these expenditures for? I asked, pointing to the line items. Susan looked uneasy. Mr. Vance personally signed off on those. He said it was for a special medical assistance program and told us to keep it confidential. I nodded slowly, saying nothing more. But in my mind, the pieces were already clicking into place. It was late when I got home. Claire was on the sofa, watching TV. When she saw me, she smiled warmly. Long day? Want me to fix you a late dinner? No, thanks. I'm just going to take a shower. As I walked past her, I caught the faint, unfamiliar scent of a man's cologne. It wasn't one I ever wore. In the bathroom, I pulled out my phone. She'd been to the Sterling Club that afternoon. The GPS tracker I'd had a PI install in her car last month confirmed it. And the photos of the Sterling Club's interior online were a perfect match for the background in the pictures. The next morning, I left early, using a morning meeting as an excuse. In reality, I sat in a Starbucks across the street from the hospital, watching the main entrance. At 8:40 a.m., Claire's car pulled into the parking garage. 10 minutes later, Ethan Vance's flashy Porsche followed. I put down my coffee and dialed a number. Hey, Mark, I need a favor. Can you pull the guest records for room 1088 at the Sterling Club for the last 3 months? Marchin was my college roommate. Now he was a detective with the Chicago PD. A few minutes later, a detailed log appeared on my phone. Just as I'd suspected, the suite was booked almost every week, always between 2 and 5 in the afternoon. The reservation was always under the same name, Ethan Vance. I was about to leave the coffee shop when I saw Claire and Ethan walk out of the hospital, one after the other. They got into the same car and headed in the direction of the Sterling Club. I followed them, parking in a discreet spot down the street. Through my car window, I watched them walk into the club, laughing together. They didn't look like colleagues. Smack! My hand hit the steering wheel. Rage threatened to swallow me whole, but it was overshadowed by a profound, soul-crushing humiliation. The woman I had cherished, the woman I had put on a pedestal, was in a private room with another man. And that man was someone I had to formally address as Mr. Vance. Just then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Ethan. Dr. Hayes, something's come up. I'll need you to chair the medical equipment bidding conference this afternoon. I stared at the message for a long time before slowly typing back a reply. Okay, understood. I knew exactly what had come up, and it was my wife. 3 from that day on, I began a comprehensive investigation. Step 1 was installing spyware on Claire's phone. It wasn't difficult. Her passcode had always been our wedding anniversary. Step 2 was asking Mark to pull all the security footage from the hospital's perimeter. With it, I could reconstruct Claire and Ethan's movements over the past few months. Step 3 was a deep dive into the Charity Foundation's finances. Within a week, I had a mountain of evidence. They hadn't just betrayed me. They were using the hospital's charity to line their own pockets. The money meant for patients who couldn't afford care was paying for their affair. The roots of it all went back 6 months. I had just been appointed hospital director, and I was riding high. Ethan, as the founder's son, naturally resented the board bringing in an outsider like me. But instead of confronting me directly, he chose a more insidious route. He went after the person closest to me. For after a week of surveillance, I knew their routine by heart. Every Wednesday afternoon, Claire would slip out of the hospital, claiming she was doing patient rounds off-site. Ethan would arrive at the Sterling Club half an hour before her. They would spend a few hours there before returning to the hospital separately. It was Wednesday, 2:10 p.m. I sat in my office, watching the red dot representing Claire on the tracking app as it moved toward the Sterling Club. Right on cue, I received a perfunctory text from Ethan about something coming up. I replied with a terse, "Okay," and then called Susan in finance. "I need the expense report for the most recent foundation withdrawal." Susan sent the file over immediately. Just yesterday, another $2 million had been transferred out. The purpose was listed as the same Special Medical Assistance Program. I let out a cold laugh and, opening my laptop, hacked into the receiving account's transaction history. As soon as the money landed, it was immediately funneled into 2 other accounts. The names on those accounts were Claire Hayes and Ethan Vance. The evidence was damning, but I needed something more direct. 5 Dr. "Hayes, you wanted to see me?" Becky came in and saw me clearing some files from my desk. "Yes, I need you to do something for me." I pulled a small, elegant box from a drawer. "Have this delivered to room 1088 at the Sterling Club." Becky looked confused. "The Sterling Club?" I nodded. "That's right. Just say it's from Director Hayes. And make sure you hand it directly to Dr. Hayes." After Becky left, I opened a recording app on my phone. The gift box contained a micro recorder, sensitive enough to pick up every sound in the room. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, the audio file began streaming to my phone. "What is this?" That was Ethan's voice. "It's from Julian," Claire replied, her tone flustered. "Ah, your husband's got a real sense of humor. Sending a gift to the wife who's cheating on him. Don't say that. What, feeling guilty? Claire, don't forget who's buying you designer bags, who bought you that condo in the Gold Coast. You think you could afford this lifestyle on Julian's salary?" I know. Claire's voice was barely a whisper. "Just keep an eye on that charity fund. Make sure Julian doesn't find anything." "Okay." My hand was trembling slightly as I listened to the recording. Not from anger, but from disgust. So this is what they thought of me. I was just a fool they could play. I opened my laptop and began composing an email. The recipients were the most influential members of the hospital's board. As I was writing, Claire called. "Honey, do you want to get dinner after work today?" Her voice was as sweet as it had always been, but now it sounded like a parody. "Sure. Where to?" I asked, forcing a gentle tone. "How about that sushi place, Moss's? I know you love it." "Sound good. See you then." After hanging up, I finished the email. In it, I laid out every piece of evidence of Ethan's embezzlement. The transaction records, the money trail, and today's audio recording. After sending it, I made another call to Mark. "I need you to run a full background check on Ethan Vance. I want everything you can find." 7 Claire seemed to be in a great mood at dinner. "What's the special occasion?" I asked, placing a piece of salmon sashimi on her plate. She smiled. "I just missed you. You've been so busy lately, we haven't had a proper meal together." "Is that so?" I took a sip of sake. "I thought you'd been pretty busy yourself." Her chopsticks paused for a fraction of a second before she resumed eating as if nothing had happened. "It's been the usual. Just work." I watched as she expertly refilled her own sake cup. "You hold your cup differently now," I said suddenly. "What?" She froze. "You never used to hold it like that." I stared at her hand. "That's how Mr. Vance holds his, isn't it?" Clatter. The ceramic cup fell from her grasp. Sake pooled on the table. Her face went white. What are you talking about?" I continued eating my sashimi, my voice calm. "Nothing. Just an observation." Is something wrong? She forced a tight smile. Don't joke like that. Do I look like I'm joking? I lifted my head and met her eyes. In that instant, I saw panic and fear swirling in their depths. But she quickly looked down, pretending to clean up the spill. I'm going to the restroom. She stood up and practically fled from the table. I knew she was going to call Ethan and tell him I was suspicious. That was exactly what I wanted. It was time to close the net. The hospital was buzzing the next morning. An anonymous tip about the misappropriation of charity funds had appeared on the hospital's internal server. The post detailed where the money had gone, complete with screenshots of the transfer records. I watched the staff hurry past my office door as I took a sip of coffee. I had arranged for the post, of course, but the source was perfectly concealed. As expected, it took less than half an hour for Ethan to storm into my office. Hayes, have you been looking into the foundation? He demanded. I set down my mug. Of course. It's a significant amount of money. I have a responsibility to ensure it's being used appropriately. The money was used for a special medical program. The books are clean. Are they? I smiled faintly. I don't suppose you'd be willing to share the details of this program, would you, Mr. Vance? His pupils contracted slightly. He sneered. Hayes, some things are better left alone. You should remember that this hospital has the Vance name on it, not yours. I'm well aware, I said, standing to meet his gaze, which is why I feel an even greater duty to protect that name. 9 that afternoon, I received the background report from Mark. Ethan's resume was perfect, too perfect. Ivy League graduate, a doctorate from overseas, residency at a world-renowned clinic. It was all fabricated. The real Ethan Vance had been a degenerate gambler 10 years ago. He'd racked up massive debts in Vegas and had nearly been killed over them. His father bailed him out, paid a fortune to scrub his past, and created a brand new, respectable identity for him. He had been skimming money from the hospital for years. The charity foundation was just the tip of the iceberg. I was reading through the file when Claire walked in. Julian, her voice was trembling. Why are you investigating the charity? I looked up. As the director, isn't that my job? But that money was used to save people. Was it? I stood and walked toward her, because my investigation shows that it ended up in a few private bank accounts. Her face drained of all color. You investigated me. She took a shaky step back. I laughed, a cold, empty sound. What did you expect? Did I let you continue your little affair with Ethan? No, it's not what you think. She stammered, waving her hands frantically. Mr. Vance and I just have a professional relationship. Professional? I took out my phone and played the audio from the Sterling Club. Hearing her own voice, her own betrayal, she crumpled, nearly collapsing to the floor. You knew all along. From the very beginning, I said, stopping the recording. I just wanted to see how disgusting the two of you could be. She lunged forward, grabbing my leg. Julian, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. It was Ethan. He seduced me. He pressured me. I kicked her away. Save it. I know exactly what kind of person you are. And so is he. The next day, just as I'd anticipated, Ethan showed up with a few thugs who were clearly not on the hospital payroll. They blocked the entrance to my office. Dr. Hayes, I'd advise you to learn your place, he said, leaning against the doorframe. Some things are best left unknown. I smiled. Is that a threat, Mr. Vance? Not at all, he sneered. Just a friendly reminder to know your own limits. Oh, and I suppose you know yours. I picked up a file from my desk and tossed it at him. That $30 million gambling debt you racked up in Vegas 10 years ago. Is that paid off yet? His face went rigid. You investigated me? I did. I threw another file at his feet. And I found these. Your fake diplomas, your fabricated credentials. Should I forward them to the rest of the board? He shot upright, signaling his men to move forward. But at that exact moment, the elevator dinged. Several police officers stepped out. Ethan Vance, you'll need to come with us to answer some questions regarding the misappropriation of charity funds. As the police led a stunned Ethan away, I took out my phone and called the key members of the board. Julian, thank you for catching this, they all said. You've saved the hospital's reputation. It's my duty, I replied, but I'd ask that you help me keep my involvement quiet. We'll let the official story be that it was an anonymous tip. Of course. Hanging up, I looked out the window. As Ethan was being put in the squad car, he looked up and saw me. His eyes were filled with venom, but I just stared back, my expression cold as ice. Soon, the news spread through the entire hospital. Everyone was talking about how Ethan Vance had embezzled millions. But no one knew that I was the one who had orchestrated his downfall. When I got home that evening, Claire was packing a suitcase. "Leaving?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. I think we need some time apart," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Time apart?" I laughed. "Claire, do you really think you can just walk away from this?" Her hands froze. "What do you mean?" "More than half of the money from the foundation went into your accounts," I said conversationally. "Do you think the police are just going to overlook that?" Her legs gave out, and she sank to the floor. "No, they can't." "Why not?" I crouched down to look her in the eye. "Claire, did you really think I would let you get away so easily?" "Julian, please," she cried, trying to grab my leg again. "I know I was wrong. Please let me go. I'll do anything." I stood up, looking down at her. "It's too late." The police came the next day, just as I knew they would. "Dr. Hayes, we need you to come with us to assist in our investigation into the misappropriation of charity funds." Claire looked at me, her eyes wide with terror, but I just stood to the side, my face a mask of indifference. "I don't know anything," she said, her voice trembling. "It was all Ethan, all of it. Our records show that the majority of the funds were transferred into an account in your name," the officer said, holding out a file. She slumped in her chair, tears streaming down her face. "No, it's not true." "Let's go," the officer said. "You can tell us all about it at the station." After they took her away, I returned to my office and got back to work. The hospital was in an uproar, but the prevailing sentiment was sympathy for me. They said I must have been through hell, investigating this all on my own. I just smiled. I was just doing my job. A week later, the case was broken wide open. Ethan and Claire were both arrested for embezzlement. The investigation uncovered even more dirt, including Ethan's fake credentials and a conspiracy between the two of them to embezzle funds from other hospital projects. The board held an emergency meeting and unanimously voted to give me full authority over the hospital's management. Dr. Hayes is a man of integrity, the board members praised. "I'm just doing what's right," I said humbly. After the meeting, I got a call from Claire's mother. "Please, you have to help Claire." She sobbed. "She's so young. This will ruin her life." I was silent for a moment before replying, "Ma'am, that's not up to me. After all your years of marriage, how can you be so heartless?" I let out a cold laugh. Marriage? She didn't seem to be thinking about our marriage when she was betraying me. 16. Once the case entered the legal system, my life returned to a semblance of normalcy. I went to work, managed the hospital, and attended the occasional medical conference. But only I knew this was far from over. Ethan was trying to throw his weight around from jail, threatening to use his connections to ruin me. Claire, meanwhile, sent me a stream of letters, begging for forgiveness and claiming she had learned her lesson. I didn't bother to respond. One evening, as I was walking to my car in the parking garage, I saw a black sedan parked next to my spot. A man in an expensive suit got out. "Dr. Hayes," he said politely. "I'm Ethan Vance's attorney. Can I help you?" I asked coolly. My client believes he was framed. While he admits to handling the funds, he maintains they were used for legitimate medical programs. I looked at him and smiled. "Really? Then perhaps you can explain why those funds were converted into luxury cars and designer watches." His expression tightened. "Well, if there's nothing else, I have to get home." 17. The next day, an anonymous post appeared online accusing me of abuse of power. The author claimed that during my tenure as director, I had forced departments to buy specific medical equipment in exchange for kickbacks. It also alleged that I routinely harassed female employees. I knew it was Ethan's pathetic attempt at a smokescreen. I wasn't worried. In fact, it was exactly what I was hoping for. "Director, shouldn't we issue a statement to deny this?" Becky asked, concerned. I waved her off. "No need. Just wait." Sure enough, it didn't take long for the truth to come out. The specific equipment I had supposedly pushed was all top of the line, purchased at the lowest market price. As for the harassment claims, they were utterly baseless. Every woman I had worked with at the hospital came forward to defend me. Instead of tarnishing my name, the investigation only served to dig up more of Ethan's own dirty laundry. 18. Dr. Hayes, it's terrible. Becky burst into my office one morning, looking panicked. Ethan Vance tried to kill himself in his cell. He slit his wrists. I looked up. Is he dead? No, the guards found him in time, she said, then hesitated. But he's telling everyone that you threatened him, that you're going to expose more of his secrets, and that's why he did it. I sneered. Threaten him? Why would I need to do that? Exactly, Becky said quickly. Everyone knows what kind of man he is. This is just another one of his games. I nodded. You can go back to your work. After she left, I pulled up a remote feed on my computer. It showed Ethan lying in a hospital bed, looking weak and frail. I knew exactly what he was trying to do, but he had severely miscalculated. 19. The next day, I paid a visit to the detention center. Whatever it is, just say it, I said, sitting across from him, my face impassive. He managed a weak smirk. So cold, Dr. Hayes. I almost died, and you can't even offer a word of concern. Do you believe you deserve my concern? He leaned forward, his voice low. Julian, let's make a deal. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, you help me get out of this, and I'll take the fall for everything Claire did. You wouldn't want to see your wife go to prison, would you? I laughed. What makes you think I still care about her? He froze for a second, then sneered. Don't pretend, Hayes. I know you still love her. Otherwise, you would have filed for divorce by now. That's because... I stood, looking down at him. I want her to watch, step by step, as her entire world burns to the ground. 20. A few days later, Claire's lawyer contacted me. She wanted a meeting. We met in a visitation room at the detention center. She looked haggard, her eyes bloodshot and haunted. Julian, she began, her voice cracking. Get to the point, I said, cutting her off. She bit her lip. Ethan told me to come and beg me for help. I scoffed. You two really are made for each other. No, she said desperately. He threatened me. He said if I didn't come, he would tell them. About the other things. Other things. Now I was interested. Like what? She immediately fell silent, her eyes darting away. Go on, I pressed. You came all this way. You might as well finish. 21. She stammered. The money. It wasn't all for us. Oh, I said with a cold smile. And where else did it go? She gritted her teeth. Ethan, he was using it to fund illegal medical experiments. Keep talking. He has a private clinic in the suburbs. They perform. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Unsanctioned procedures. My blood ran cold. I had suspected something darker was at play, but the reality was worse than I had imagined. You knew about this. Why didn't you say anything? Tears welled in her eyes. I was scared. Scared? I sneered. Or were you a part of it? She looked up sharply. No, I wasn't. You just helped cover it up? I stood. Claire, you continue to astound me. I called, mark the moment I left the detention center. I need you to look into private clinics in the suburbs, especially any that have opened in the last few years. Soon, he sent over a detailed file. One clinic, the Wellness Initiative, caught my eye. On paper, it was a facility for treating rare diseases. But in reality, I forwarded the file to my contact at the district attorney's office and waited. The next day, the police raided the clinic. What they found shocked everyone. Vast quantities of illegal pharmaceuticals, unapproved medical devices, and gruesome surgical logs. It all pointed to a massive criminal enterprise. And Ethan Vance was a key player. The case took a dramatic turn. Faced with irrefutable evidence, Ethan had no choice but to confess. He started naming names. He detailed how he had used the hospital's resources to serve the criminal organization, and how he had used the money to keep Claire compliant. Claire, for her part, insisted she had only known bits and pieces, but the evidence showed she had actively participated in covering up some of their illegal activities. Dr. Hayes, one of the board members said, shaking his head. We never imagined we had such a cancer growing within our hospital. It's better to find it early, I said calmly. After work that day, I drove to a cemetery. I visited the grave of a young woman who had died at that clinic 6 months earlier. She had gone in for a simple procedure, but died from massive internal bleeding due to their malpractice. Her death was what had started my entire investigation. She was the one who had opened my eyes to the true nature of Ethan and Claire. Rest in peace, I said, placing a bouquet of white lilies on her grave. They're going to get what they deserve. The trial began on a cold, rainy morning. I sat in the gallery, watching as Ethan and Claire were led to the defendant's table. They were both pale and gaunt, stripped of their former arrogance. The prosecutor began to lay out their crimes: embezzlement, conspiracy to commit medical fraud, accessory to illegal medical practices. The charges were read one by one, the evidence presented piece by piece. Ethan Vance, do you have any idea how many people you've harmed? The prosecutor asked. He kept his head down, silent. Claire Hayes, the prosecutor continued. As a doctor, you took an oath. Why would you protect a man engaged in these criminal acts? Claire suddenly looked up, her eyes finding mine in the gallery. Because I fell in love with him. I couldn't help but let out a bitter, silent laugh. Love? That was her excuse for destroying so many lives? During a recess, Claire's lawyer approached me. Mr. Hayes, your wife would like to speak with you alone. I shook my head. There's nothing to talk about, she said. The lawyer hesitated. She said if this is the last time she'll ever see you, she's begging you for this chance. After a moment's thought, I followed him to a private meeting room. The moment I walked in, Claire threw herself at my feet. Julian, please, you have to save me. I kicked her away in disgust. What about the people who died in that clinic? Do they get to be saved? I didn't know anyone would die. She sobbed. I thought it was just minor procedures. It's not. And you thought that made it okay? She knelt on the floor, her body shaking. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry. Do you think saying you're sorry can bring dead people back to life? On the day of the sentencing, the courtroom was packed. For his numerous crimes, Ethan Vance was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Claire was sentenced to 15 years. When she heard the verdict, she collapsed. Ethan just stared at the floor, his expression blank. Julian, Claire looked back at me, tears streaming down her face. Will I ever get out? I stood up, my face devoid of emotion. It seems you still don't understand what you did wrong. I walked over to the barrier, separating the gallery from the defendants. I leaned down and looked at her. You wanted designer bags and a luxury condo, right? Well, now you don't have to worry about any of that. Julian, don't call me that, I interrupted. My lawyer has already sent the divorce papers. They just need your signature. With that, I turned and walked out of the courtroom. The sky outside was still overcast, but for the first time in months, I felt light. 27. After the trial, life at the hospital returned to normal. I threw myself into my work, completely overhauling the Charity Foundation's management and establishing a dedicated oversight committee. The board was thrilled with my performance and unanimously voted to increase my equity stake in the hospital. You're a lifesaver, Julian, they said. If you hadn't caught this, the hospital could have been ruined. I just smiled. I was only doing my job. The clinic that had cost so many lives was shut down for good, and everyone involved was brought to justice. When the victims' families came to the hospital to thank me, I told them justice was served. Your loved ones can finally have peace. 28. A month later, I received the signed divorce papers. Looking at the shaky, tear-stained signature, I could picture Claire trembling as she signed her old life away. Dr. Hayes, Becky said, knocking on my door. The families of the clinic's victims are here. They want to thank you in person. I shook my head. Tell them I'm out of town for a conference. But someone had to do it, I said. No thanks are necessary. After work, I drove out to the coast alone. Standing on the shore, with the salt spray on my face, I felt like I was waking up from a long, terrible dream. From discovering the truth to meticulously planning my revenge, and finally, to seeing justice served. It had taken 6 months to bring everything into the light. It was all over, and now I could finally start my own life again.